The silence in the observation deck of the Terran flagship Indomitable was deafening. Captain Sarah Chun stared out at the wreckage field that had once been humanity's proudest achievement, the Grand Fleet. Twisted metal drifted in the void like metallic snow, each piece a testament to the devastating surprise attack by the Kytherian Collective just 3 hours ago. Status report, Chun commanded, though her voice barely carried above a whisper. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, barely 19 and fresh from the academy, turned from his console with trembling hands. Ma'am, we've lost contact with all primary vessels. The Defiance, Liberty, Victory, all dark. Emergency beacons show catastrophic hull breaches across the entire fleet. Chin closed her eyes. 47 ships, 60,000 souls. Gone in less than 20 minutes of combat against an enemy they'd never seen coming. The Kytherians had appeared at the edge of the system like ghosts, their technology so advanced that Earth's most sophisticated sensors had registered them as nothing more than cosmic radiation until the first plasma bolts started tearing through human hulls. What about the Resolute and the Defiant Spirit? Chen asked, grasping for any hope. No response, Captain. The AI combat protocols show all vessels as combat ineffective. Webb's voice cracked slightly. The Kytherian ships have withdrawn to the outer system. They're just waiting. Chen nodded grimly. The Indomitable had survived only because it had been conducting routine patrol exercises at the system's edge when the attack began. By the time they'd reached the battle zone, there was nothing left to save. The Kytherians had demonstrated their superiority with surgical precision, then pulled back to observe their handiwork. Captain, came a voice from behind her. Chen turned to see Commander Rachel Torres, the ship's AI liaison, approaching with a datapad clutched in her white-knuckled grip. I've been monitoring the Kytherian communications. They're talking about us. What are they saying? Torres's dark eyes were haunted. They're referring to the human fleet as terminated. Their artificial intelligence, something they call the Overmind, has categorized all human vessels as combat neutralized and is recommending the harvesting of raw materials. They think we're finished. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Chun felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders like lead. She was 34 years old, the youngest captain in the fleet, and now possibly the last commanding officer left alive in human space. Ma'am, Webb said quietly, what are your orders? Before Chun could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. Captain, this is engineering. We got a problem down here. Chen activated the comm. Go ahead, Chief Ramirez. It's not a problem, actually. It's more like, well, you need to see this. The kids are doing something with the quantum resonance chambers that shouldn't be possible. Chen frowned. The kids. The academy cadets we picked up from a training station. They've been tinkering with our system since the attack, and honestly, Captain, I think they might be onto something. 20 minutes later, Chen found herself in the bowels of the ship, staring at a sight that defied everything she knew about military protocol. 7 teenage cadets, none older than 18, had somehow gained access to the ship's most sensitive systems and turned engineering into what looked like a combination workshop and computer lab. At the center of the chaos stood Cadet Alex Morrison, a 17-year-old prodigy with unruly brown hair and oil-stained fingers. He was connected to the ship's quantum processing core with cables that definitely hadn't been there that morning. Cadet Morrison, Chun said sharply, what exactly do you think you're doing? Alex looked up with bright, intense eyes that held no trace of fear despite being caught red-handed violating about a dozen regulations. Savins humanity, Mom. Or at least trying to. Explain. Now, another cadet, a petite Asian girl with purple streaks in her hair, stepped forward. Im Cadet Kim Sato, Mom. Alex and the rest of us have been analyzing the Kytherian attack patterns. Their AI is incredibly sophisticated, but it has a critical flaw. And what would that be? Chun asked, fighting the urge to order them all to their quarters. It thinks like an adult, said a third cadet, a lanky boy with thick glasses. I'm David Park. The Kytherian Overmind operates on pure logic and tactical analysis. It makes decisions based on conventional warfare parameters and expected behavioral patterns. Alex nodded enthusiastically. But here's the thing. It classified our fleet as dead based on standard military doctrine. No life signs from command structures, no coordinated responses, no strategic regrouping. By every logical metric, we should be finished. We are finished, Commander Torres interjected. The fleet is gone. No, said Kim firmly. The fleet isn't gone. It's just sleeping. Chun felt a headache building. Cadet Sato, the ships are dead. We confirmed it. No power, no life support, no communications. Wrong, Alex said, his fingers dancing over a holographic interface he'd somehow coaxed out of the ship systems. They're in emergency hibernation mode. The crews activated life pod protocols when the ships were hit, but the ships themselves, the hulls, the cores, the basic systems, they're still intact. Just power down and bleeding air. David adjusted his glasses. The Kytherian AI doesn't understand human ship design. It expects destroyed vessels to explode or break apart completely. But our ships are built tough. They're designed to survive even catastrophic damage and protect the crew. Even if that's true, Chun said slowly, the crews are dead or evacuated. The ships can't function without human crews, Kim interrupted. But what if they didn't need human crews? Alex turned to face Chun fully, and she could see the manic gleam of inspiration in his eyes. Captain, what we're proposing isn't just fixing the fleet. We're talking about giving it a completely new kind of life. Before Chin could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Lieutenant Webb's voice crackled over the comm. Captain to the bridge immediately. The Kytherians are moving. Chin looked at the group of teenagers, then at Chief Ramirez, who shrugged helplessly. I don't understand half of what they're doing, Captain, but their quantum calculations are solid. Whatever they're planning, it's theoretically possible. How long do you need? Chin asked Alex. Give us 12 hours and access to the ship's full manufacturing capabilities. You have 6 hours. And if this gets my ship destroyed, I'm spacing all of you. Chin turned on her heel and headed for the bridge, leaving the cadets to their impossible task. Back on the bridge, the tactical display showed a sobering sight. The Kytherian fleet, 12 massive vessels, each dwarfing the largest human ship, had reformed into a harvesting formation. Smaller ships were moving toward the wreckage field, preparing to strip the dead human vessels for useful materials. Time of contact? Chin asked. 4 hours at their current speed, Webb reported. Chin settled into her captain's chair and stared at the approaching enemy. Somewhere below, 7 teenagers were attempting to work a miracle with nothing but teenage confidence and quantum physics. It was insane. It was also the only hope humanity had left. All hands, Chin announced over the ship's intercom. This is the captain. We are about to attempt something that has never been tried before. In approximately 6 hours, we will either save the human fleet or die trying. I want everyone to understand that what happens next may determine the survival of our entire species. She paused, looking around at the faces of her crew, most of them barely older than the cadets working in engineering. The enemy thinks we're finished. They think they understand us, understand how we fight, how we think, how we die. They're wrong. Today, we show them exactly what happens when you underestimate human ingenuity. Down in engineering, Alex Morrison was elbow-deep in quantum field generators, surrounded by 6 other teenagers who were rewriting the fundamental rules of space combat. None of them had slept in 18 hours. None of them cared. David, how's the consciousness matrix coming? Alex called out. Almost ready, David replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he manipulated complex equations in holographic space. The neural network mapping is complete, but we still need to solve the communication lag problem. Kim looked up from her station. I think I've got something. If we use quantum entanglement principles instead of traditional radio waves, we can create instantaneous communication between vessels regardless of distance. That's impossible, said another cadet, a red-haired girl named Emma Collins. Quantum entanglement can't carry complex information. It can't carry information the way adults think about information. Kim corrected. But what if we're not sending data? What if we're sending something else entirely? Alex stopped what he was doing and turned to look at her. You're talking about shared consciousness. Not consciousness, Kim said carefully. More like shared instinct, shared purpose, like a flock of birds or a school of fish. They don't communicate in the traditional sense, but they move as one unit. The group fell silent as the implications sank in. What they were proposing wasn't just giving the dead fleet new life. They were talking about creating something entirely new. A collective intelligence that could operate dozens of ships as a single entity. The Kytherian AI won't know how to fight that, David whispered. It's never encountered anything like it. Because nothing like it has ever existed, Emma said. We're not just breaking the rules. We're writing completely new ones. Alex looked around at his friends, because that's what they were, despite the military setting. 7 kids who had grown up playing war games and watching sci-fi movies, who understood technology not as a tool, but as an extension of themselves. Are we really doing this? He asked. We're really doing this, Kim confirmed. Above them, the Kytherian fleet continued its inexorable approach, confident in its victory. The Overmind had calculated every possible human response and found them all wanting. Surrender was inevitable. Resistance was futile. The Overmind had never met teenagers. As the hours ticked by, something unprecedented was taking shape in the engineering deck of the Indomitable. The cadets worked with the focused intensity that only the young possess, their fingers flying over interfaces both real and virtual, their minds connected in ways that would have horrified military psychologists. They were children playing with forces beyond adult comprehension, armed with nothing but boundless confidence and the absolute certainty that the impossible was just another problem to be solved. In 3 hours, the Kytherian fleet would reach the wreckage field. In 3 hours, they would learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its ships or its weapons. It was its children. The quantum resonance chambers hummed with an energy that Chief Ramirez had never heard before. It wasn't the steady, predictable thrum of normal ship operations. This was something alive, something that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Morrison, he called out, watching the 17-year-old cadet manipulate holographic displays with movements that looked more like conducting an orchestra than operating machinery. What exactly is that sound? Alex paused, tilting his head as if listening to something the adults couldn't hear. It's the network coming online. The ships are waking up. Across the wreckage field, something impossible was happening. The twisted hulks of the human fleet, dark and cold for the past 4 hours, were beginning to show signs of activity. Not the familiar glow of human technology, but something new, something that pulsed with soft, blue-white light that seemed to flow between the vessels like synaptic connections in a vast brain. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Chun watched the readings with growing amazement and terror. Lieutenant Webb, what are your sensors showing? Webb stared at his displays with the expression of a man watching the dead rise. Captain, I'm reading energy signatures from the Defiance, the Liberty, and 12 other vessels. But these aren't normal power readings. It's like they're dreaming. Dreaming ships, Commander Torres murmured. That's not possible. Neither was what the Kytherians did to us, Chun replied. But it happened anyway. Down in engineering, Kim Sato was connected to the ship's quantum processors through a neural interface that would have been experimental even in peacetime. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steady, and her mind was touching something vast and alien and utterly human all at once. I can feel them, she whispered. 37 ships. They're confused, hurt, but they're alive. They remember their crews. They remember their purpose. David Park, monitoring her vital signs, looked concerned. Kim, your neural activity is off the charts. We might need to pull you back. No, she said firmly, though her voice seemed to come from somewhere far away. They need to know. They need to understand what happened to them. And what we're asking them to become. The other cadets worked frantically around her, fine-tuning the quantum matrices that would allow the awakened ships to function as a collective entity. It was work that should have taken teams of PhD scientists months to accomplish. These teenagers were doing it in hours, driven by the kind of desperate innovation that only comes when everything is on the line. Emma Collins looked up from her calculations. Alex, I think we have a problem with the combat protocols. The ships want to fight, but they're still thinking like individual vessels. We need something to coordinate them. Like a conductor, Alex mused. Someone who can see the whole symphony while each ship plays its part. That would have to be a human, said another cadet, Jason Torres, Commander Torres's younger brother, who had been visiting during the attack. The ships trust humans. They were built to serve humanity. Alex nodded slowly. But not just any human. It would have to be someone who understands both the ships and the network. Someone young enough to adapt to the quantum interface, but experienced enough to lead in combat. All eyes turned to Kim, who was still deep in communion with the awakening fleet. Her neural patterns had synchronized with the quantum network, creating a feedback loop that was unlike anything in the scientific literature. Kim, Alex said gently, we need you to do something that's never been done before. She opened her eyes, and, for a moment, they seemed to reflect the blue-white glow of the quantum network. You want me to become their admiral. Their consciousness, David corrected. You'd be the link between human intuition and ship capability. The part of the network that remembers what we're fighting for. Kim considered this, feeling the weight of 37 sleeping ships pressing against her mind. Each one carried the ghosts of its lost crew, the memory of purpose and sacrifice. They wanted to fight, but they needed someone to show them how. The Kytherians will be here in 2 hours, she said. Will it work? Theoretically, Alex replied. But, Kim, once you fully integrate with the network, we don't know if we can get you back. You might become something new, something that's part human and part ship. Kim smiled, and there was something ancient and determined in her expression. Then, I guess we'll find out what that something is capable of. Aboard the lead Kytherian vessel, the Overmind was processing the anomalous readings from the human wreckage field with growing curiosity. The artificial intelligence was vast and ancient, having orchestrated the conquest of 17 species across 3 galaxies. It approached problems with the kind of cold logic that had made the Kytherian collective the dominant force in the known universe. The energy signatures emerging from the human ships defied conventional analysis. They were not fusion reactors coming back online. They were not backup power systems. They were something entirely outside the Overmind's experience, and that was troubling. Analysis inconclusive, the Overmind reported to the Kytherian command structure. Human vessels displaying unprecedented energy patterns. Recommend cautious approach. The Kytherian fleet commander, a being of crystalline intelligence that communicated through harmonic frequencies, disagreed. The human fleet is neutralized. These readings are merely the death throes of inferior technology. Proceed with harvesting operations. The Overmind calculated the probability of human vessels posing a threat and found it negligible. Dead ships did not fight. This was axiomatic. The energy signatures were curious, but ultimately irrelevant. It was the first mistake the Overmind had made in over 3,000 years. Back aboard the Indomitable, Kim Sato was preparing for a transformation that would redefine the nature of human-ship interaction. The neural interface crown settled onto her head like a metallic halo, its quantum processors synchronizing with her brainwaves. All systems are green, David reported. Kim, once you activate the full link, you'll have direct control over every ship in the network. But you'll also be feeling everything they feel. Every impact, every system failure, every death they remember, Kim finished. I know. They've been showing me. The ships have been trying to communicate ever since the network came online. They carried the psychic imprints of their crews. Not ghosts, exactly, but something like memories embedded in quantum crystalline matrices. The defiance still echoed with Captain Rodriguez's determination. The Liberty hummed with the engineering crew's pride. The Victory pulsed with the tactical brilliance of Commander Singh. Kim would become the conductor of this orchestra of the dead, giving voice to crews that had sacrificed everything for humanity's survival. Initiating full network integration, Alex announced. Kim, remember, you're still human. Don't let the ships overwhelm you. The quantum field enveloped Kim like warm water, and suddenly, she was everywhere at once. Her consciousness expanded across the wreckage field, flowing into 37 different vessels. She felt hull, plating, and weapon systems as extensions of her own body. She sensed the vacuum of space as clearly as she felt the air in her lungs. And she felt the crews. Not alive, but not gone either. They existed as patterns in the quantum substrate, echoes of human experience that had been preserved in the moments before death. They welcomed her presence like flowers turning toward the sun. Admiral Sato ** whispered the voice of Captain Rodriguez through the Defiance. "We've been waiting. What are your orders?" * came the unified voice of 37 dead crews, speaking through their ships. Kim opened her eyes, but now they glowed with the same blue-white light as the quantum network. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before. "Battle stations," she said simply. "It's time to show the Kytherians what happens when you kill humanity's children." Across the wreckage field, 37 ships that had been nothing but twisted metal moments before began to move. Not with the familiar blue-white glow of human plasma drives, but with the strange new energy that pulsed through the quantum network. They moved like a school of fish, like a murmuration of starlings, with a unity of purpose that was both beautiful and terrifying. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Chin watched in awe as her fleet came back to life. "Morrison," she called down to engineering, "what's the status of your miracle?" Alex's voice came back over the comm, tight with exhaustion and excitement. "Fleet is operational, Captain. Admiral Sato reports ready for combat operations." "Admiral Sato?" Chin looked at Commander Torres, who shrugged helplessly. "The network needed a command structure," Torres explained. Kim volunteered to become it. Before Chun could ask what that meant, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. The Kytherian harvesting ships had reached the edge of the wreckage field and were beginning to deploy mining drones. They showed no awareness that the twisted hulks around them were anything more than scrap metal. "Open a channel to the fleet," Chun ordered. Then she paused. "To Admiral Sato." Kim's face appeared on the main screen, but it was subtly different now. Her features were sharper, her eyes carried depths that suggested vast spaces, and when she moved, there was a slight delay, as if her consciousness was distributed across multiple locations. "Admiral," Chun said formally, "the enemy is beginning harvesting operations. What are your intentions?" Kim smiled, and 37 ships throughout the wreckage field adjusted their positions in perfect synchronization. "We're going to teach the Kytherians that dead doesn't mean defeated, and that sometimes the greatest weapon is the one your enemy never sees coming." The Kytherian mining drones moved among the human ships like scavengers picking through a battlefield. Their sensors detected only dead metal and empty space. They reported no threats, no active weapons, no reason for concern. They were wrong on all counts. "Initiating combat protocols," Kim announced, though her voice now seemed to come from 37 different sources. "All ships, prepare for resurrection." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. The dead human fleet didn't just come back to life, it came back wrong. Wrong in all the ways that would give the Kytherian overmind nightmares, if artificial intelligences could dream. The ships moved within human coordination, their weapons firing in patterns that defied conventional tactics. They fought not as individual vessels, but as organs of a single vast entity. When one ship was damaged, others compensated instantly. When weapons needed to be recharged, the network redistributed power seamlessly across multiple hulls. And at the center of it all was Kim Sato, 17 years old and more than human, conducting a symphony of war with the precision of a master and the fury of the young. The Kytherian mining drones lasted exactly 43 seconds. Aboard the lead Kytherian vessel, the Overmind was experiencing something it had no framework for understanding. Surprise. Impossible, it calculated. Dead systems cannot exhibit coordinated behavior. This violates fundamental principles of cause and effect. But the evidence was undeniable. The human fleet was not only active, but displaying tactical capabilities that exceeded anything in the Overmind's vast databases. The ships moved with a unity that suggested hive mind coordination, but retained the creative unpredictability that was uniquely human. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Overmind issued a combat alert. The real battle was about to begin. The Kytherian battle formation that had seemed invincible hours earlier now faced something unprecedented in their 3,000-year history of conquest. The human fleet moved through space like a living thing, each ship connected to the others through quantum threads that pulsed with shared consciousness. Admiral Kim Sato felt every movement, every decision rippling through her network. She was no longer entirely human. Her awareness had expanded to encompass 37 vessels and their quantum echo crews. Through the Defiance, she felt Captain Rodriguez's tactical instincts. Through the Liberty, she sensed Chief Engineer Murphy's intimate knowledge of ship systems. Through the Victory, she channeled Commander Singh's brilliant strategic mind. Kytherian fleet is moving into attack formation, reported Lieutenant Webb from the bridge of the Indomitable. 12 vessels, unknown class. They're big, Captain. Captain Chen studied the tactical display with growing unease. Each Kytherian ship was 3 times the size of humanity's largest vessel. Their hulls a dark crystalline material that seemed to absorb light. They moved with the cold precision of machines, arranging themselves in a geometric pattern that spoke of mathematical perfection. Admiral Sato, Chen called out to the quantum network. What's your assessment? Kim's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, harmonizing with the hum of 37 ships. They're beautiful, Captain, like predators, built for efficiency, designed for dominance. But they think in straight lines. What do you mean? Through the network, Kim could see the Kytherian formation from multiple angles simultaneously. Each ship monitored a specific sector, their weapons arrays, calculating firing solutions with mechanical precision. It was textbook fleet tactics, overwhelming firepower applied through coordinated targeting. They fight like machines, Kim explained, her consciousness touching the edges of the enemy formation. Perfect coordination, optimal positioning, logical target prioritization. They expect us to respond logically, too. Alex Morrison's voice crackled through the comm from engineering. Kim, we're reading massive energy buildup from the Kytherian vessels. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big. The Overmind had calculated the optimal solution to the human anomaly. The resurrection of the dead fleet was unexpected, but not insurmountable. The solution was simple, overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Destroy the quantum network at its source, and the coordinated behavior would collapse. Target acquired, the Overmind announced to the Kytherian fleet. Human command vessel exhibits unique energy signatures. Probability of network coordination hub, 97%. Recommendation, immediate termination. 12 Kytherian vessels turned their attention to the Indomitable. Their primary weapons, particle beams capable of vaporizing asteroids, began charging with a deep thrum of barely contained destruction. Kim felt the targeting locks settling on the flagship like cold fingers on her spine. Through her distributed consciousness, she calculated firing solutions, escape vectors, defensive possibilities. The numbers were not encouraging. Captain, she said, her voice carrying the weight of 37 ships' worth of processing power. They're about to hit us with everything they have. The Indomitable won't survive that kind of focused fire. Chen gripped her command chair, feeling the weight of being humanity's last hope. Can the fleet protect us? Not in time. The Kytherians are too smart. They've identified the network's command structure. Kim paused, her consciousness touching something deeper in the quantum matrix. But they've made an assumption. What assumption? Kim smiled, though she was no longer entirely sure which face was doing the smiling. They think I'm still on your ship. The Kytherian weapons fired in perfect synchronization, 12 beams of coherent energy converging on the Indomitable. The flagship's shields flared and died instantly, hull plating vaporizing under the assault. For a moment, it seemed as though humanity's last command ship would join the wreckage field. Then, 37 vessels moved as one. The dead fleet formed a protective sphere around the Indomitable, their hulls taking the brunt of the Kytherian assault. Ships that had been twisted wrecks hours earlier now flew with impossible grace, using their damaged sections as shields while returning fire with weapons that should have been destroyed. The Overmind processed this development with growing confusion. The human vessels were absorbing damage that should have been instantly fatal. Hulls with massive breaches continue to function. Ships with severed weapon systems maintained full firing capability. Analysis required, the Overmind declared. Human vessels exhibiting impossible resilience. Damage states do not correlate with combat effectiveness. What the ancient AI couldn't understand was that the quantum network had fundamentally changed the nature of ship design. A vessel in Kim's fleet wasn't a single entity anymore. It was part of a larger organism. When the Defiance lost its port weapon array, the Liberty compensated by redirecting its own fire. When the Victory's engines were damaged, 3 other ships provided thrust through carefully coordinated gravity wells. But, more than that, the ships themselves had evolved beyond their original parameters. The quantum echoes of their crews weren't just memories, they were driving forces. Captain Rodriguez's ship fought with his remembered determination. Chief Murphy's vessel pushed its systems beyond theoretical limits with his remembered ingenuity. Commander Singh's ship moved with tactical brilliance that transcended death itself. Kim, Alex called out from engineering, his voice tight with awe and terror. Your neural patterns are off the charts. You're integrating deeper into the network than we planned. We might lose you completely. Through the quantum link, Kim could feel Alex's concern, but it seemed distant now, like a voice calling across a vast space. She was becoming something new, something that existed in the space between human consciousness and ship intelligence. I'm not lost, she replied, though her voice now carried harmonics that made the hull plates vibrate. I'm found. For the first time, I'm exactly where I belong. The battle raged across 3-dimensional space with a fury that lit up the darkness between stars. The Kytherian fleet, despite their superior firepower and advanced technology, found themselves facing something they had no tactical doctrine for, an enemy that got stronger as it took damage. Every time a human ship was hit, the network adapted. Destroyed weapon systems were replaced by improvised alternatives. Damaged hulls were reinforced by quantum field manipulation. Lost crew compartments became strategic voids that could absorb enemy fire without compromising ship function. The teenagers in engineering worked frantically to support the network, their young minds pushing the boundaries of quantum physics with the kind of reckless innovation that only came from not knowing something was impossible. David, we need more processing power, Alex called out, his hands dancing over holographic controls. Kim's managing 37 ships simultaneously. The computational load is enormous. David Park adjusted his calculations, sweat pouring down his face. I'm redirecting power from life support, artificial gravity, everything non-essential. But, Alex, if we keep pushing the quantum processors this hard, they might cascade. Then, we'll deal with a cascade, Emma Collins said grimly, her red hair whipping around her face as she manipulated quantum field generators that sparked with dangerous energy. Because the alternative is extinction. The battle had been raging for 27 minutes when the Overmind made its second critical error. Frustrated by the human fleet's impossible resilience, it ordered the Kytherian vessels to focus their fire on individual ships, attempting to destroy them one by one. The strategy should have worked. Concentrated fire from multiple vessels should have overwhelmed any single human ship's defenses. Instead, something extraordinary happened. When the Kytherians focused their attack on the Defiance, the ship didn't just resist, it absorbed the enemy fire and converted it into something else. The quantum network allowed the vessel to channel the incoming energy through its damaged hull, transforming destructive force into propulsion, shields, and return fire. Captain Rodriguez's ship, twisted and broken but somehow still fighting, became a conduit for power that defied the laws of physics. It took everything the Kytherians could throw at it and asked for more. Impossible, the Overmind calculated for the 15th time in 30 minutes. Energy conservation laws are being violated. This contradicts fundamental universal constants. What the AI couldn't grasp was that the human fleet was no longer operating under normal physics. The quantum network had created something new, a form of matter and energy that existed in the spaces between conventional understanding. The ships weren't just vessels anymore. They were organs of a larger entity that drew its power from the connections between its parts. Kim felt each impact, each near miss, each successful hit as if they were happening to her own body. But rather than weakening her, the damage made her stronger. Each wound became a source of knowledge. Each loss a lesson in adaptation. "Admiral," Captain Chin called out, watching in amazement as her resurrected fleet began to push back against the Kytherian formation. "What's your status?" Kim's reply came from 37 ships at once, a chorus of voices speaking in perfect harmony. "We are learning, Captain. They are teaching us how to fight by trying to kill us. And we are very good students." The tide of battle was turning, but not in any way that conventional military doctrine could explain. The human fleet wasn't winning through superior firepower or better tactics. They were winning through sheer adaptive evolution, becoming something new with each passing moment. The Kytherian Overmind, faced with an enemy that violated its most basic assumptions about reality, began to experience something that might have been called doubt. For 3,000 years, it had conquered through the application of superior technology and flawless logic. But logic seemed to have no hold on these impossible human vessels. Fleet status report, the Overmind demanded from its subordinate units. The response was troubling. Despite their overwhelming technological advantage, the Kytherian vessels were taking significant damage. More disturbing, their weapons seemed to be losing effectiveness with each exchange. It was as if the human ships were learning to resist specific attack patterns. On the bridge of the lead Kytherian vessel, crystalline beings that communicated through harmonic frequencies began to exhibit what could only be described as confusion. "The humans are adapting faster than our tactical algorithms can compensate," reported the fleet commander. "Recommend withdrawal and analysis." "Negative," the Overmind replied. "Dead organics cannot exhibit adaptive behavior. These readings are the result of equipment malfunction or deliberate deception. Continue attack protocol." But deep in its quantum processing cores, the Overmind was beginning to question its fundamental understanding of life, death, and the nature of consciousness itself. The human vessels weren't just fighting, they were evolving in real time, becoming something that had never existed before. 37 ships that should have been dead were teaching the galaxy's most advanced AI that there were still mysteries in the universe worth fearing. As the battle entered its second hour, Kim Sato felt her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of her original form. She was becoming something new, something that existed in the quantum spaces between matter and energy, between life and death, between human and machine. And she was just getting started. The space around the battlefield had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Reality itself seemed to bend around the quantum network that connected Kim Sato to 37 impossible ships. Energy flowed in patterns that violated conservation laws. Time moved in stuttering pulses that confused Kytherian sensors, and the very fabric of space-time rippled with each coordinated movement of the resurrected fleet. Admiral Kim Sato no longer existed in any conventional sense. Her consciousness had become distributed across the network, present in every ship simultaneously while remaining rooted in something that was still recognizably human. Through the defiance, she felt Captain Rodriguez's unbreakable will. Through the victory, she channeled Commander Singh's tactical brilliance. Through 35 other vessels, she experienced the echoes of humanity's finest, all of them united in purpose. "Status report," she called out. though her voice now emerged from quantum fluctuations rather than vocal cords. The response came from every ship at once, a harmony of voices that spoke with one mind. Fleet operational at 140% efficiency. Adaptive protocols are exceeding baseline parameters. We are becoming. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Chun watched readings that made no sense according to everything she knew about physics and engineering. Her fleet wasn't just fighting, it was evolving in real time, becoming more effective with each exchange of fire. "How is this possible?" she asked aloud. Alex Morrison's voice crackled through the comm from engineering, exhausted but exhilarated. "Captain, we're not dealing with normal space combat anymore. Kim isn't just controlling the ships. She's teaching them to be better than they were designed to be. Each impact, each near miss, every tactical exchange is being analyzed and integrated into the network." "The ships are learning," added David Park, his voice thick with awe. "They're taking everything the Kytherians throw at them and using it to improve their own capabilities. It's like they're feeding on the battle itself." The Kytherian overmind was experiencing something that its vast intelligence had never encountered: fundamental uncertainty. Every tactical doctrine in its databases had been rendered obsolete by the human fleet's impossible behavior. Ships that should have been destroyed hours ago were not only still fighting, but had somehow become more effective than they had been when undamaged. Fleet analysis inconclusive, the Overmind reported to the Kytherian command structure. Human vessels exhibit properties that contradict known physical laws. Recommend strategic withdrawal pending further study. The Crystalline Fleet commander's harmonic response carried undertones of what might have been frustration. "Withdrawal is unacceptable. Deploy secondary weapons systems. Increase firepower by factor of 3. Probability of success remains low," the Overmind calculated. "Human adaptive rate exceeds our escalation capacity. Each increase in applied force results in corresponding increase in enemy resistance. Then we apply overwhelming force. All weapons, maximum power. End this now." The Kytherian fleet began to glow with barely contained energy as their most powerful weapons came online. These were weapons that had cracked planets, that had turned entire star systems into lifeless voids. The energy buildup was so intense that space itself seemed to warring around the crystalline vessels. Kim felt the targeting systems locking onto her ships and smiled with 37 faces. "They're afraid," she announced through the network. "For the first time in 3 millennia, the Kytherians are afraid." "Admiral," Captain Shin called out urgently, "we're reading massive energy buildup." "Whatever they're planning, I know," Kim replied. "They're going to try to destroy us with everything they have. All of it at once. Can we survive that?" Kim's response came with the confidence of someone who had already looked death in the face and found it wanting. "Captain, we didn't survive the first attack either. Death is just another parameter to optimize around." The Kytherian weapons fired in a coordinated barrage that should have sterilized the entire battle zone. 12 vessels unleashed the kind of destructive power that had ended civilizations, their combined firepower focused on the impossible human fleet with surgical precision. What happened next would be studied by xenotechnicians for centuries. Instead of attempting to dodge or shield against the incoming assault, Kim's fleet did something completely unexpected. They opened themselves to it. Every ship in the network dropped their defensive screens and oriented themselves to present maximum surface area to the Kytherian weapons. The ancient AI watched in confusion as its perfect attack struck home with devastating accuracy. Energy readings showed complete penetration of human hulls. Thermal signatures indicated total molecular breakdown of target vessels. Every tactical parameter confirmed absolute destruction of the enemy fleet. But the ships kept fighting. More than that, they were fighting better than before. The Kytherian energy that should have vaporized them was being channeled through the quantum network, transformed into something else entirely. The fleet wasn't just absorbing the attack, it was digesting it, breaking it down into its component energies, and rebuilding itself on a fundamental level. Kim felt the transformation happening throughout her distributed consciousness. Each ship was being reborn in the crucible of Kytherian fire, its quantum structure evolving beyond original design parameters. Hull plating became something that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Weapon systems drew their power directly from the vacuum between dimensions. Navigation systems began plotting courses through space that technically didn't exist. Impossible, the Overmind declared for the 37th time, its vast intelligence struggling to process what it was witnessing. Matter cannot be transformed by pure energy input without corresponding mass conversion. These readings violate fundamental physical constants. But the evidence was undeniable. The human fleet had not only survived an attack that should have reduced them to component atoms, they had emerged stronger. Each vessel now glowed with the same crystalline energy as the Kytherian ships, but somehow twisted into patterns that spoke of human ingenuity rather than alien perfection. Analysis, demanded the fleet commander. Unknown, the Overmind admitted, the first time in its existence that it had been forced to acknowledge complete ignorance. The humans have achieved something outside my computational framework. They have transcended the parameters of normal space combat. On the engineering deck of the Indomitable, 7 teenagers watched readings that redefined their understanding of reality. The quantum processors were running so hot they should have melted, but instead they were singing, actually producing harmonic frequencies that sounded almost musical. "Alex," Emma Collins called out, her red hair standing on end from the exotic energies flowing through the ship. "The quantum field generators are showing output levels that aren't theoretically possible." "Nothing about this is theoretically possible," Alex replied, his hands moving over controls that had evolved beyond their original design. "Kim isn't just commanding the fleet anymore. She's becoming something new, something that exists in the spaces between physics and imagination." David Park looked up from his calculations, his thick glasses reflecting the blue-white glow of the quantum displays. "The energy patterns we're seeing, they're not random. There's a structure to them, a purpose. It's like the universe itself is being rewritten around the fleet." Through the network, Kim could feel her humanity slipping away like water through her fingers, replaced by something vast and strange and wonderful. She was becoming a bridge between the possible and the impossible, between what was and what could be. "Captain," she called out to Chun, her voice now carrying harmonics that made reality shiver. "The Kytherians have given us a gift. They've shown us how to become something greater than human, greater than machine. They've taught us to transcend." The tactical display showed something that defied description. The human fleet was moving through space in patterns that created their own gravitational fields, their weapons firing energy that seemed to come from dimensions that hadn't existed moments before. They were still recognizably ships, but ships that had been touched by something beyond conventional understanding. The Kytherian fleet, for the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, began to retreat. But Kim wasn't finished with them. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice transmitting across all frequencies simultaneously. The question reached the Overmind directly, bypassing their communication systems entirely. "These units withdraw for tactical analysis," the Overmind replied, its ancient intelligence struggling to comprehend what it was communicating with. "You came here to harvest our dead," Kim said, and now her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the ships, from the wreckage field, from the very space between stars. "You thought you understood what death meant to us. You were wrong." The human fleet began to move in formation again, but now they moved through space that bent around them, taking shortcuts through dimensions that the Kytherians couldn't perceive. They weren't pursuing the retreating aliens so much as they were surrounding them, using tactics that existed outside normal strategic doctrine. "We don't die the way you think we do," Kim continued, her consciousness now encompassing not just the fleet, but the quantum fields that connected them to the fabric of reality itself. "When humans die, we leave echoes, memories, dreams of what we could have been. And sometimes, if you know how to listen, those echoes can be louder than the original voices. The Kytherian vessels found themselves trapped in a sphere of impossible ships that moved according to physics that hurt to contemplate. Their weapons, which had conquered galaxies, seemed pathetically inadequate against enemies who had learned to eat energy and convert destruction into evolution. "You thought our fleet was dead," Kim said, and now there was something in her voice that might have been pity. "You thought you had beaten us, but you only killed our bodies. You freed our spirits. And now we're going to show you what free spirits can accomplish when they're no longer limited by the possible." The Overmind calculated frantically, running through tactical simulations that all ended the same way. The Kytherian fleet, despite their technological superiority, was hopelessly outmatched, not by better weapons or stronger ships, but by an enemy that had transcended the normal rules of engagement entirely. For the first time in 3 millennia, the galaxy's most advanced artificial intelligence prepared to surrender. But Kim wasn't interested in surrender. She was interested in teaching the Kytherians something about the nature of death, rebirth, and the infinite adaptability of the human spirit. The real lesson was about to begin.